Hello, this is Dr. David Chang. I'm chair of the International Division of the ASCRS Foundation, and we're here in San Diego at the 2019 annual meeting where just this morning we had the great honor of presenting Dr. Dick Litwin with the second annual ASCRS Foundation Humanitarian Award. And Dick, congratulations, and
Thanks.
the
Thanks.
committee, the selection committee, just thought you were so deserving and your story was so compelling. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to have you tell our members a little bit more about yourself, your career, and a pretty much informal interview. And I thought we could just start with, how you went into private practice in Berkeley, California, some many years ago.
Well, as we started, you asked me how I became an ophthalmologist, and I'm sitting here recollecting that. Truth is, I was a very uncomfortable medical student. Um, uh, we went from orthopedics in 2 weeks, and I knew nothing, and by the time I knew something, we were on to something else. And then by a fluke, I got a summer job in the ophthalmology department.
Ah.
I learned how to look through the ophthalmoscope and the slit lamp, and I saw the eye doctors operating quietly, talking about fly fishing, not throwing their instruments.
Yeah.
Later I learned that they operate with their own instruments. Um, but from that moment, I became an ophthalmologist. When the internists were looking at an eye and pretending to see something, they would say, "Litwin, come over here." And I relaxed. Everything was okay. And I've been an ophthalmologist
That's
in
great.
spirit ever since.
Now, where did you do your eye residency, and what led you to go into private practice in Berkeley, California?
Well, um, the I did my ophthalmology training at Barnes, and soon after coming back to Los Angeles, where my mother was living, and I thought I had to take care of her, um, I got a draft notice right after I started practice. And then we had the good fortune of being sent to Belgium, where we lived in a 200-year-old village in a magnificent house. And we had 3 fabulous years in the Army. And I realized that, hey, you could really have a good life and not just doing what you want out of guilt. So we moved back to Berkeley, where Judith and I had met, and I opened my practice in 1971 in a 600 square foot place, and it gradually grew. And I thought really that life couldn't get any better than this. The practice was good, the family was good. Um, we were living in a sunny place, and um,
So
then,
we,
yeah,
so those of us that have been through that stage, your practice is busy. You've got staff, you've got bills to pay, you have a family and kids. How does someone in private practice decide to do international work and to go to do anything in ophthalmology internationally?
you know, chances come to me from time to time. I don't really work hard at figuring out what to do, but suddenly an opportunity appears. And Judith was gung-ho to go to India. We had found Seva, and our first trip was for 6 weeks. And thanks to a busy practice, I could do without the income and pay the expenses for the 6 weeks. And so, I was in my mid-40s. I'd worked hard all my life, so I did it. And we just happened to be sent immediately to visit Dr. Venkateswamy. And in Pondicherry, they were doing a massive eye, eye camp. I don't know how many thousand patients they examined, but I think they actually operated 1,000 people. and we watched it was in a movie theater without chairs, and we watched the rows of people every day, more and more and more. And for me, it was an epiphany. It was like there's a whole world that I'm entitled to be part of merely because I'm an ophthalmologist. And of course, no one persuaded me of anything. And from that time, we have been under Suzanne Gilbert's directions, helping us out to see what place to go. That same trip, we went up to where SEVA had just founded the Nepal Blindness Program. It was run by Nicole Grasset, who had eliminated smallpox in North India. She saw so much blindness, she decided to devote herself to ending cataract blindness. They didn't know it was cataract blindness. They did a survey to find that out. And the people who had helped her in smallpox, none of whom I believe were ophthalmologists, decided to form the SEVA Foundation. They found Dr. Venkataswamy, the first person associated with it.
With SEVA.
With SEVA. Yeah. And the growth of the ARVIN system has involved SEVA at every step, either fundraising or a big conference about an idea. They were influential in starting LICO, the ARVIN training program for people who run hospitals. Soon after I demonstrated the first implant at ARVIN, the first posterior chamber implant.
Yeah.
And it became obvious that they'd had to have it.
So what year was this about?
Early 82.
So this was what, on a subsequent trip, or was that the very first trip?
No, it was a subsequent trip
Yeah.
when I did the implant with Nachar. But it was, for them, an aha moment. It was a mature cataract and a carpenter. I used, at that time, very primitive equipment.
Right.
I didn't have aspiration. I just irrigated out a mature cataract and slipped in a
posterior chamber lens.
lens
I see.
in their
Okay.
air. And they were amazed. Dr. V said, "That's it." He said, not only can he see, he can work. Not only can he work, but he can retrospectively pay for his implant.
Yeah.
He saw a system that would work if you're doing it by the millions.
Wow. Wow.
And that's turned out to be true.
So you really did one of, if not the first, IOL at the ARVIN system as a visitor, a visiting faculty.
And then a few years later, SEVA purchased an entire turnkey implant factory, put it on the 4th floor of the ARVIN Eye Hospital.
Right.
And today that
being Auralab.
They're making about 3 million implants a day.
Yeah.
Their cost of manufacture is about $1.
Right.
And it was a $100 item when we went over there.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that story in itself is great in terms of just really developing a way to manufacture lenses for resource-limited countries. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Dr. Venkataswamy. I mean, he's legendary. You're in Madurai then in southern India. Was this at a point where there was only the Madurai hospital?
Yes.
And tell me what it was like in those days. He's a legend, but unfortunately is no longer with us, and a whole generation, all future generations really don't have the opportunity to learn about him.
I don't tear up much when I think about people from the past, but he was such a special guy. He had severe psoriatic arthritis. And in spite of that, he was a lock surgeon. A lock is 100,000 in Hindi. And he had done 100,000 operations in his career at the time I'd met him.
Yes.
He was the kind of person who knew your children's name. He seemed sincerely interested in how they're doing. Several times he, especially with my eldest son, said, "Send him. I will mold him."
Wow.
And Josh wound up doing some of the research for their suture
Yeah,
factory.
yeah.
Um, he took a special
And
liking
we
to,
should mention Josh is now an ophthalmologist
yeah,
and
my
working
son
with you
is,
in
yeah,
Berkeley.
well, I'm
Yeah,
working for him.
yeah.
Um, but he had a special feeling for Judith.
Right.
And whenever he came to the States, he stayed with us and pontificated from a little magic chair we have up in our bedroom about Gandhi in the old days. Judith always took him shopping at thrift stores because they don't have overcoats in India. So it was just a wonderful, intimate
So from that first moment, it sounds like you really fell in love with the
yeah.
Aravind system and the
And
people there.
Nachar and Mr. Srinivasan and just everybody that you meet is kind, simple, straightforward, and when you scratch them, you find out that they are infinitely capable.
Yeah. And you've been going on a regular basis
Yes,
ever since?
I don't think I've
How
missed a
often?
year
That's
since
wonderful.
'82.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're really an honorary faculty member there. You're one of they consider you one of their founding fathers, and um, now you've also been, of course, to Nepal with Dr. Ruit, Sandak Ruit,
Yes.
and Tilganga. How did you get involved there?
Well, the first, uh, we actually lived in Kathmandu for 6 months,
Mm,
and I was running that Nepal blindness program uh, very badly, in my opinion. But we were there. I moved there with my youngest son. Um, we've done many eye camps for Nicole. And in the course of it, I met a young Nepali ophthalmologist that had just come back from a year with Fred Hollows. That was Sandak Ruit. And for a number of years, I would come with a duffel bag full of donated implants.
mm.
He would borrow a Jeep and a few ophthalmic assistants. We'd go up into the mountains and fine-tune the practice of removing a cataract and slipping in an implant in the most primitive
Yeah,
possible
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
And I remember the first one we actually did, there were 80 cases. And on day one, we had to take 3 of them back and get some cortex out, but
Mm.
everybody could see.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he took so much flack from Nepali ophthalmologists, from
yeah.
international ophthalmologists, and then in about a year, everybody did it.
Yes. No, well, I think certainly he really brought the IOL to that country, and so I think it's hard for this current generation to realize just how controversial IOLs were back then, and how vehemently opposed many people,
Yeah.
particularly in academics, were. Was that true at Yerevan and in India? Was
No,
there a
in Aravind, all it took was Dr. V and Nachar to see one case, and that was it.
yeah,
That was also true of the Nepali doctors. In fact, in developing countries, I don't think I've ever seen anybody who was against it. They
yeah,
were against it up in the hills,
hmm,
but everybody realized that that was the way to go.
yeah,
There
yeah,
was more academics around the world that said, no, you have to do clinical studies and you have to do
yeah.
research, and in 5 years, maybe.
Yeah. So I think a lot of ophthalmologists may have heard of SEVA. Many haven't, don't really know much about the organization. Can you maybe introduce them to what a special organization that is?
Well, one of its history is very special because it began as a bunch of volunteers for smallpox eradication,
Right.
and it was only because Nicole Grasset chose to do a blindness project um, that they formed the organization to raise a few $1,000s so that she could fly around and ask her various donors she knew. And they immediately launched uh, one of the first nationwide surveys of blindness. They had a helicopter, people went all over the country to see what could cause the blindness. They were hoping it would be trachoma and they would find a magic bullet for it. And it turned out it was 80% cataract,
Yeah.
and so it became a cataract program. SAVA built one hospital in the Lumbini zone, and has run since that time, still has a central supply organization that services all the hospitals in Nepal.
Yeah. And of course, they are all over the world.
Yeah,
Their model is really trying to have community-based eye clinics, eye hospitals,
yes, it
correct?
started at a time when the Dr. Schweitzer model was still there, that rich people from a Western country would set up a hospital and send Western doctors, even though they are wonderful. And about the time SAVA started, the model changed to let's train local doctors
Hmm.
and make them self-sufficient in supplies, surgery. Uh, Many of the hospitals were built by a Nepali donating land, and then SAVA and others coming up with the building of the hospital and equipment.
Yeah. So Larry and Gurja Brilliant were, of course, smallpox experts
Yeah,
and really not in ophthalmology. Were you one of the first ophthalmologists
probably the
to belong?
second.
Yeah.
A fellow named Bill Hawks, a wonderful
Okay.
guy from Michigan, was out there doing good work.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And so they found you, you found them, and together kind of saw the potential in Erevan, really.
I, I would just want to interject that as well as doing the smallpox work, Larry and Garaja had originally gone to take teaching from a Indian guru, and some of the initial board members of SEVA were people, some of whom were doctors, uh, who had been involved with that same kind of spiritual idea, and especially you mentioned Ram Dass. Um, there's been an effort to keep alive a certain spiritual flame.
Yeah. Wonderful. Tell us about your wife, Judith, and how she's been a partner in all of this work in this career.
Well, Judith is a family therapist. She became enthused about the idea of going to India, and she found the SEVA Foundation, and we joined with them in that first magical Indian and Nepali venture, and we stayed in touch with them. Um, Judith's take on people is really important because in addition to all the bricks and mortar and people and training and and the organizational structure that all makes sense, then you put in people and they have feelings, they
Yeah.
have motives,
Right.
they feel well treated, they feel badly treated. Um, she's very sensitive to that, and people like to talk to her. And that makes the work of the foundation so much easier to know what's really going on with people's mind. So
Excellent. Fascinating. Yeah.
she's actually fairly unique in that
Yes,
among the
I would agree.
volunteers.
How many of your international trips has she accompanied you on?
She had a period of about a decade where she had severe headaches, and she didn't come on those trips, but everything else.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
say 30 out of 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Um, what do you think is the proudest achievement that you and Erevan and Seva, have done in terms of impacting global blindness?
Well, it's been a continuous improvement in how the situation is is attacked, how SEVA operates. Um, I would just point out one recent thing that is being done all over the world now is vision centers.
Hmm.
Instead of hoping that people will come to eye camps or even to eye hospitals, finding areas that are too far away and encouraging the formation of a kind of medical optometric optician center where people go for their eyes. And they have telemedicine, they have blood pressure cuffs and urinalysis, and they have a transportation set up to bring people to the base hospital. And the hope is to have coverage of 1 billion people in a few years. And that's being supported by SEVA, by ARVID, and by other organizations as well.
I want to end by getting your advice to maybe some of our younger members or other ASCRS members. You know, I think typically people might be in private practice and they might think, well, what could I do? I'm not part of an academic department. I'm not part of some big organization. No one really knows who I am. And yet, I think what clearly the selection committee was so impressed with is what you've been able to do and how much impact you've had as a solo private practitioner. What a great example that set. And just be curious as to what advice you might give people who might want to be involved or wondering about this.
Well, first of all, more and more as I talk to younger ophthalmologists, oh, they've been there. They've
Yeah.
all been there.
Yeah.
Not all, but so
No.
many.
Yes.
I certainly didn't think as we set out to do this that it would have so many personal benefits to me. It's something wonderful that Judith and I do together.
Yeah.
And our lives otherwise are kind of separate.
Yeah.
She goes to work, I go to work, we
Right.
come home tired, there are the children, there's all the fun of the family.
Right.
But this is something that we have,
Yeah.
that we do together,
Oh,
and both of us in our various ways do it creatively.
yes.
So I think it could affect many people who are bitten by that bug, that they now have a bigger part of life, that even though they have the great practice and the great everything, there's actually more.
And you've had some very special friendships with some very influential
Also,
people. But
David,
yeah,
I know you. How is it I know you?
yeah, yeah,
One of the first things that happened when Dr. V was nobody, really.
right.
He was an older man with crippled hands and kind of not so great clothes. He was invited to go to Massachusetts Eye and Ear, and he asked me to go with him. So who am I at? So here's Stapens welcoming
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
giving me an hour tour, showing me
Terrific.
every new
Yeah.
gadget that they were doing.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I'm going over there to do good. And, and it's been like that. To know the people in the developing countries, but also to know the people in America who are interested in this kind of work. I have to say, it's the most wonderful people I've met in life. And I think that if I didn't do this, if I hadn't fallen into this, my life would be diminished. I wouldn't know it, but so many great people I've met.
No. Well, that really says a lot. And I mean, I think you epitomize genuine compassion and genuine devotion, and I think that comes across. And again, your career has just been so inspiring to so many of us. And on behalf of the foundation and its board, congratulations. We're just so honored to have you be this year's honoree. Thank you very much.